So besides the Letty dress, this dress is actually one of the dresses you guys ask me about the most when it comes to patterns. And this also happens to be one of the dresses I wear the most. This fabric is quite thin and we're obviously in the middle of autumn. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to just make this dress again from a really nice warm fabric, obviously in green. So I thought I'd just do a very quick video about how I remake this dress in green from brushed cotton. For the pattern, we're going to be using the Claire dress for the bodice, which I actually think if you just use the entire pattern, that would probably make a quite similar dress. But I didn't want to print another A-line skirt when I already had one printed because it just takes so many pages. So I'm using a different skirt. But also just to say, the bodice I have extended by maybe like an inch or so just to make it a little bit longer, even though I feel like it's still quite short, but this is even shorter. So that's one thing I've changed. I'm also going to be lining it with the same pattern. For the skirt, we're going to be using the skirt portion from the Sophie dress, which is just an A-line skirt. And like I said, I've just been having that skirt lying around, so I thought I'm just going to use that one. It's shortened a little bit because I am very short. I'm also going to be using the pockets from this pattern because those are the pockets I use for everything. For a change, I am going to put a ruffle on the bottom though, if I've got enough fabric, just because I think that's gonna look cute. That is the pattern that I'm going to be using, but I think if you just use the Claire pattern, you probably get a similar dress. But you know, why would I just use one pattern when I could just use 27? Let's go. Good morning. In case you haven't noticed yet, the sewing room is shrinking. So we now have not just the fireplace around, but also the insert in here, which means the entire fireplace is probably like half a meter off the wall now, which means we are getting less and less space to work with by the minute. But it's fine because we're moving eventually. With that out of the way, we're gonna get started on sewing today, and it's gonna be a super easy pattern, and I'm very excited because it's gonna be some mindless sewing as I'm watching the Vampire Diaries. So this is what the Claire pattern looks like. We've got a back and a front, which both will go onto the fold so that we get an entire piece. And I'm gonna cut this out twice because I want to have the bodice lined, because that's how I did it for the other dress and it worked really nicely, and it was quite a tidy finish. Then we've got our trusted pocket pattern, which is gonna go into the side seam, and a very heavily used skirt pattern, which looks somewhat like this. So again, this will go on the fold here, so we get a really nice and big skirt panel that only flares out a tiny little bit towards the side. So we're not getting a full circle skirt, it's just an A-line skirt. So with this being folded at the bottom, that is the length I would go for if I wanted the skirt to just be a single piece, which is what I've done for the blue dress. The fabric I'm using has a nice pattern, but it's not overly busy, so I think we can get away with putting a ruffle on. Actually, this is the other side to the birthday dress fabric, and I think with this one a ruffle would have been very, very busy, whereas with this, that should be fine. If we wanted the skirt to be, because yeah, maybe like this. Yeah, 32 is always about the length I go for a skirt, because that shows enough ankle to be scandalous. But I want the ruffle to be 5 inches. That was, I think, what I used to go for. So the panel then needs to be 27 inches plus seam allowance. So we'll just get started to cut all of this out. Shouldn't take too long. And then we go immediately into sewing. Starting out by attaching the shoulder seams of both the front and the back together, and I'm doing this for both the lining and the outer. Then the neckline starts looking like a circle, and we can apply the outer to the lining so that both necklines line up. Then I sew the necklines together, and I go around the seam allowance with my pinking shears to get rid of all the bulk. Then the necklines are finished, but you can see that the armholes are still undone. So what I'm gonna do is called the burrito method, and honestly every time I use it I don't believe it actually works. But I just twist everything around and then turn the fabric around this little sausage I've just created so that I can finish up the armholes. And then, like I said, I honestly never believe it works, but then when you pull it the right way around again, it all comes undone and you've got the armhole finished, which is honestly a surprise every single time for me. So now we finished up the armholes, but we still need to work on the side seams. So now I just match them up and then sew them together, and then we've got our bodice finished. So the bodice is entirely finished, and after I tried it on, I did chop a little bit off the back because it felt like there was too much of an angle and I just wanted it to be straight at the back. And then eventually these little straps that I've made will go onto the side seams here when I attach it to the skirt, and then I can pull it a little bit tighter around there. So that's what I've done with the other one as well, and I think because it's quite loose, it kind of gives me the opportunity to make it a little bit smaller. I'm very excited, so we're gonna go over and start working on the skirt now. So the way I'm gonna do the skirt is I'll start off by attaching all of the pockets to the side seams. Then I will attach one side seam to the other so that we have a very long panel, but I'm not going to turn it into a circle yet, so I'm not going to sew the entire skirt together because I find it much easier to apply the ruffle onto a straight line rather than a circle. Let's go! In case you're wondering why I look like a wet dog, it is because it's raining. So I actually got up around 12 o'clock, which was the last time I spoke to you guys, and then wanted to go out, and then I had my lunch, and then I set out my cinnamon rolls because I'm still on a cinnamon roll streak where I eat them every day. And now it's like 2:30. How did this happen? We've got a long panel of the skirt and then a pocket on this side, pocket on that side. And then we've got our gathered ruffle, and I used 4 lengths of the fabric, which would be around 8 meters. So that was an absolute pain to gather. Now it's a matter of attaching this to that. Also, important question, is anyone else also really impatient and tells themselves I'm gonna put some frosting on top of my cinnamon rolls and then eats them all before there is even a chance to put any frosting on? Or is it just me? All the gathers are attached, and also it turns out I didn't need 8 meters of gathers because this is still left. So we're gonna go back to the sewing machine. The skirt is assembled and hemmed, and it is rather on the big side as we expected because it is now going to be gathered into the bodice. Gathering the top, putting it in here, and not forgetting to put the straps in as well. That's the plan. We are done. Let me show you. So this is what the dress looks like, and I'm honestly so happy with it. I mean, I knew that it would be nice because I like the blue one already, and this one's green, so it was just like an easy win, but I put it on and I felt like it was probably one of my favorite things I've ever made. And I know I'm saying this after having just finished the Outlander coat, and that was also one of the favorite things I've ever made. But this is what I was talking about in my birthday video, where I kind of say that like every time I make something new, I feel the pressure for it to be one of my favorite things ever, because it feels like I should be better every time I make something new. So this one's a win. So the only 2 things I still want to do is basically, if you look at the bodice, you can see that there's a little bit of a white stripe here, which makes sense because the front is a little bit longer, but it kind of isn't perfectly even. So I might just take up the seam by like 0.5 centimeter in the middle, just so it's not quite as obvious, because it's kind of like a little bit more to one side than the other. And then, because the inside of the bodice is lined and the front is a little bit more low cut than the back. But it's really hard to actually tell, like, if it was just lying on a chair in the morning and I tried to put it on, just like which way is the right way around. So I'm gonna put a little label right here, and then that's gonna be it. Just need to iron down the ruffle a little bit. Also the waistline to make everything sit smoothly. And then we've got the little straps here, which I don't think I mentioned to you guys before how I actually made them. So there's no pattern piece for this. I just kind of cut out a long strip and kind of held it to my waist to see how long it would have to be to tie a bow at the back, and just sewed it down, so no secret here. But this having turned out so well is a good sign that this is an easy project even for beginners. Because even though I consider myself a more experienced seamstress, but definitely not a professional one, there is a lot that goes wrong when I sew, and that's normal. But I know as a beginner it gets overwhelming when things go wrong and you don't really know what to do. So I think this one is actually a really easy project for anyone of any skill level, because there's not much that can go wrong, I think. And it's honestly so cute. Like when I just put it on, I just wanted to keep it on. I was just like, I have to take it off to talk to you guys again, because otherwise there would be no point in doing a reveal. So I think I will get so much wear out of this, and I'm honestly so excited, because I feel like the last week I wore so many of my non-corset clothes, which I don't normally do. So I do wear my corset basically every day, which I have been doing for years. I know the popular media will tell you that corsets are like the devil and the torture device and made by the patriarchy and made by the patriarchy to suppress women. Not really what I as a corset wearer think. I have mentioned in the past I fit my dresses to my natural body shape and then tend to wear them with a corset, because even though it in theory fits my body, I have such a sensitive stomach. So if there's any pressure on it, which I know is weird saying that it's better with a corset, but if I've got like a very localized pressure of a waistband, I get terrible stomach aches. So basically that means it's impossible for me to wear any type of skirt or dress that is tight at the waist, because sooner or later I will get really bad stomach aches and I just can't wear it all day. Whereas wearing a corset means it distributes the pressure and I just don't get stomach aches, which is lovely, because I am someone who has chronic stomach aches and I've had them all my life, and only when I started wearing corsets got better. So yes, it was the answer to everything for me. But if I wake up with a stomach ache, which does happen because I get anxiety related stomach aches, and especially going to work, which gives me anxiety, wake up with stomach ache already. So those days aren't really days I put my corset on. And it was my last week full time on campus last week, so you can imagine those stomach aches were fierce. And I woke up feeling really nauseous, so I just didn't really feel like wearing my corset. So I was going through all of my no corset dresses, which currently are 2, and my baguette trousers, which I also wear without a corset. So it just felt like confused more things to wear. So I'm gonna wear this so much, honestly, especially if I'm just in the house and watch me film every single future video in this dress. I love it. And I tried it on with my little jumper that is one of my favorite jumpers that I got years ago from New Look, that has the little wings here. Love it. It's so pretty. I actually just got myself another secondhand jumper off eBay, which looks really cute, and I think this will go so well with this dress. I'm so excited. And this feels so autumnal because the fabric is just really soft. And it's even softer on the other side. So this is just gonna be, I'm happy. But to show you what it actually looks like when I wear it, I think I have been talking enough. So let's jump straight into the reveal.